Welcome to Sacred Caregiving, a resource for family caregivers. My name is Barbara, and today I want to talk about medications. And this is something that came up after watching one of the social media influencers that I follow, Mama Jennifer. And she was talking about that on her recent trip to see her oldest son, when she was coming back home, she and her checked luggage got separated. And she mentioned kind of offhand that her prescription medications were in there and were in her checked luggage. And my first thought was, I need to tell people after years of my traveling and whatnot, I'm like, I need to share this. So, what I recommend after years of travel, I've been traveling since I was like 3 years old, 2, 3 years old, because my dad traveled a lot for business. And my mom and I would periodically go with him when he'd be gone for long periods of time. And, as I got older, as my mom got her cancer diagnosis, got her diagnosis of diabetes, as we both got sleep apnea over the years, there were more prescription medications that we had to travel with. And one of the things that we learned is if you are going on a trip and you take prescription medication, put it in your carry-on. I don't care if you have to, take out your phone charger or take something else out in order to fit your prescription medication, or if you have to get a slightly bigger carry-on to fit your medication. Put your medication in your carry-on. The reason being is, as exemplified by Mama Jennifer, she and her checked luggage got separated. Her medication was in her checked luggage. Fortunately, she was traveling home. I don't know what her medication situation was at home, but we'll get into that in a minute. But if you are traveling to somewhere and your medication is in your checked luggage and you and your checked luggage get separated, which seems to be happening a little bit more these days, is if your medication is in your checked luggage and you and your checked luggage get separated and you're on a trip, you are now without your needed prescription medication. Like, I know for me, I'm on medication for my diabetes. I'm on medication for my asthma. I'm on, medication for my back. So that's 3 separate medical conditions that I have to have prescription medication for. Therefore, I pack those prescription medications when I'm traveling. I pack them in my carry-on. Because that way, if my checked luggage and I somehow get separated, then at least I have my prescription medication with me. I don't have to worry about that. Clothes can be washed. Clothes can be, replaced. Cell phone chargers can be bought. Cell phone chargers can be replaced. There are things in your suitcase that can be replaced. What cannot be replaced is your prescription medication, and I will tell you why. If you are traveling overseas, you will have to go to an emergency room in a foreign country for them to diagnose your condition again and then give you the medication for your medical condition. In most instances, you can't just walk into a pharmacy and say, here, Like, I know even when I was moving from California to Oklahoma, I had my California prescriptions with me. I went to an Oklahoma pharmacy and I said, look, here's prescriptions. Now, it wasn't for anything major, it was for my asthma medicine. It was for, I think that was about it. It was just my asthma medication because I hadn't been diagnosed with diabetes yet. I, was my back hadn't been exacerbated to the point that it is now. So it was just my asthma medication. I had prescriptions. I had the bottles. They would not accept my California prescription. They would not accept a doctor's office from California phoning in to Oklahoma to fulfill this prescription. Excuse me. What ended up happening was I had to then make an appointment and find an Oklahoma physician, have the Oklahoma physician go in. I have my medical records with me. They have to review my medical records. They have to examine me. And then they finally get my prescription medication filled and called into the pharmacy. But the entire process took about a month for that. And in the meantime, I was without my asthma medication in the middle of summer in Oklahoma. And if you know anything about Oklahoma, it is full of pollen and grass and all of the things that I'm allergic to, especially in summer. And I'm without my asthma medication. So that's why I say take your prescription medications with you. I had my prescription medications with me, thankfully. Thankfully, I had enough because I had had the foresight to get what they call the vacation overhaul or vacation override, sorry. Vacation override on the prescription medications, which meant that they would give me a 3-month supply and it would, get me through and the insurance company would pay for it. And it's once a year. That's the second thing that's another thing I want to talk about is with your prescription medications. If you are having to refill them early or get them filled because your luggage with the prescription medication went one way and you're off on your trip or whatever and you've managed to get a prescription called into a pharmacy and the pharmacy's accepted it and whatnot, there's still a matter of the insurance company might not cover it. I know for me, there was a prescription recently that the doctor had, called in and called in the refill on. And it was like a couple of days or whatever before the medication was due to be refilled. And the insurance company said, no, we're not going to fill it. Like the pharmacist literally had to call the insurance company and just say, look, it's a couple of days out, whatever. And I got lucky and the insurance company said yes. But in another instance, insurance company was like, nope, not going to happen. We're not going to cover it. And it would have ended up costing me close to $700 for medication. And fortunately, it was, a medication that I could decline. It wasn't a life or death medication, so I declined it. But that's another thing to consider is cost. Is like if you're getting separated from your medication, you just got your medication filled like right before you went on vacation, which is another thing that I recommend is like get your medication filled as close to, within like a week or two of when you're going to depart, if at all possible. You know, Granted, sometimes it's not possible because, like I said, insurance companies, insurance companies, pharmacies, all of these things you have to take into consideration when you're filling your medication before traveling. Now, fortunately, in Mama Jennifer's case, she was headed home. So hopefully she had, medications at home that hopefully she had her medications at home. And if not, she was able to get in touch, hopefully, with her own physician who would hopefully be understanding to her circumstance and go ahead and fill the medications for her. And hopefully, pharmacy explains to the insurance company situation. Now, another important thing to note is if you have a great deal of prescription medications that you don't want to take in with your carry on. Here's the thing: if you are traveling within the United States, now this is just within the United States, you might want to check with the, if you're traveling internationally, you might want to check with the airlines that you are traveling with to see. But if traveling within the United States under FAA and TSA guidelines, you can have a separate bag for your medications, for your medical equipment, and it will not count towards your carry-on allowance. There are a couple of stipulations to that. Number one, it has to be clearly marked. So you have to clearly mark that it is a medical bag. Like when my mom and I traveled with our CPAP machines and our prescription medications, we had a red rollator, right? Just a red rolling bag that literally had written on it in Sharpie, medical equipment bag, like medical bag. And we had in there all of our prescription medications in their original bottles. That's the other thing, is when you are traveling, you must keep your medications in their original bottles. Second thing to note is, yes, you can take over-the-counter medications. If you have an over-the-counter liquid medication, it can only be the 3-ounce container that TSA allows. If, however, this is the thing, is if you have a prescription liquid medication that is clearly labeled with the prescription label on it in its original prescription container. So like if you're taking, a liquid medication that was prescribed to you, it has to have the label on it to say this is a prescription medication. The other thing is get a note from your doctor before you leave that you carry with you that says this person is under my care. These are their medical conditions. These are their, for which they're taking, just basically like this person is under my care. They are on prescription medications, that are required for them to take. Just so, it makes things easier when dealing with going through security. Other thing that makes it easier is plan to get there early. Like they usually recommend like 2 hours for a domestic flight, 3 hours for an international flight. Guess what? If you're traveling domestically and you have medications or medical equipment, plan for 3 hours. And that's one of the things that we will get into, but I will just briefly mention it here, is if you are in a wheelchair or on a walker, whatever, get the pre-boarding pass. Get the TSA fast track. That will enable you to get through TSA a little bit quicker, or at least get you to the front of the line. It's still going to be a process because, TSA may want to take out the medications. They may want to, test the liquid medication to make sure that it is, in fact, what you say it is, and that you're not like trying to stick vodka or something into the airline in a prescription medication bottle. You know, they may want to like look at the prescription labels and make sure everything's up to date. Usually it's like within the past 3 months that they like it to have. I believe that's what it was. But, fact check me. I always encourage people when you are watching these videos, when you're watching my videos, go through, fact check me. If there's something that I said that was unintentionally like misinformation, please leave it in the comments and tell me what your source was so that I can go back and fix it, and just like put like a little update and say, hey, look, on this video that I posted on at like such and such a time on my prescription medication video, I said this, but it's actually this. So, those are my tips and tricks for traveling with medication. Now, medication when you're at home. Number one, please, please, please keep it out of the reach of young kids. I'll give you an example. Recently, one of my friends who is 90 something years old had his little Medi-Set on the coffee table because the nurse had just been there to refill all the medications and go through everything and whatnot. And they had one of the Medi-Sets for the week on the coffee table. Well, his 2 times great granddaughter came in. And she's gotten to the point now that she's a toddler. And she went to reach for the Medi-Set that had his medications in there. Fortunately, her dad was there, grabbed it out of his hand, gave it to Grandpa, and Grandpa put it up. But keep medications out of the reach of young kids. That's number one. Number two, if you're like me and you have a bunch of medications to keep track of, because I take a lot of over-the-counter like vitamins and minerals and things for being a postmenopausal diabetic hypertensive woman. and someone who has had issues with anemia in the past, and I have a whole laundry list of things wrong with me at the moment. But if you have like a whole bunch of medications, keep all of your medications in one spot. I have a basket, that I keep all of my medications in. So like, for example, here is my medication basket. Now, don't be alarmed by the number of medications that are in there. Yes, it's a lot of pill bottles, but these ones with the yellow tops are actually the vitamins that I take. But you can see that I also keep my spacer in there for my inhaler, and I keep a thermometer in there, which just of course beeped at me because it thought I wanted to take my temperature. So I keep my medications all in here. The only thing that I don't keep in here, because there's not enough room, is I don't keep my blood sugar materials in there. But I keep my glucometer in like just a little zipper makeup bag that has my glucometer and my lancets and some cotton balls, as well as the basically the sugar water. Little like over the counter sugar water that you get at the pharmacy in case my blood sugar drops too low and I need to take that. But I keep like all of my diabetic supplies together. I keep all of my medications together. I don't live with small children, so I don't have to worry about like small children. If small children come over, it's in my bedroom. I shut my bedroom door. I tell them, hey, I tell them and their parents, look, my bedroom is off limits. I mean, my bedroom is off limits anyway. But, just to kind of reiterate the fact, yeah, it's off limits. But yeah, if you have small children around, keep it away from the small children. That is not to say you have to keep them under lock and key. I did have one client, I did have a former client of mine who actually did keep his medications under lock and key. He kept them in basically a closet with a padlock on it. And he didn't have small children around, but he lived in a house where part of it had been destroyed and he was living in the back part of the house. That's a whole other issue. But because things weren't necessarily like that secure at his house, he preferred to keep his medication in a closet with a padlock on it. And he kept the key on his key ring. So it was always with him. So, I mentioned before Mediset. Now, what is a Mediset? For those of you who don't know, little plastic containers. You can get them pretty much at any pharmacy. You can get them online. You can get some of the like smaller ones at the bargain stores that offer things for like a little over $1. For to keeping with YouTube guidelines. I can't mention anything by name. But, wherever basic like medical equipment and pharmaceutical items are sold, you can usually find a Mediset. And there's different ones you can get. You can get like a long strip that's, sometimes they're clear, sometimes they're in different colored plastic, whatever. And they go from Sunday to Saturday. In case you were wondering, that's what the letters on top of the little flip lids for the Mediset represent. They represent Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So they go from Sunday to Saturday. They go 7 days. And you can put the medications in there for each day. Now that's great if you're only taking them once a day. And it's great if you don't have like that many medications. Now, there are ones that you can get that are bigger. I used to have one that was basically the size of a laptop when I was younger. Because of the amount of medications I was taking, because of the amount of vitamins and stuff I was taking. I had a lot more medical issues when I was younger. I had gastric reflux disease as a result of having to have my gallbladder out when I was 23. I had, my asthma medications. At the time, I was on like 3 different inhalers and a pill. And then I was on I was on medication for irritable bowel disease and all of these things. So I had a lot of medications. So I had a Mediset that, like I said, was literally the size of a laptop. And I'm not kidding about that. Excuse me. For some reason, I think Oklahoma allergies are starting to kick in. You can also get, like what my aunt got for my grandma was they had like these little plastic round cups. What my aunt had for my grandma was these little plastic cups with a lid, and she'd put like the morning medication in there and have like AM written on the top, and then she had another one that she do every day that had PM. And she had those for every day of the week. And she put the, you know, pills in there for the morning, pills in another one for the evening. She'd set them on the dining room table. Or she'd set them over on the counter. Now, my grandma had full grown adult, as in over the age of 18, grandchildren. She had great grandchildren who were preteens and teenagers. So we didn't worry about them getting into her medication. So, you know, figure out what works for you. I know when I travel, I don't take this, you know, I don't take this big, huge basket with me when I travel. Well, when I travel, let's put it this way, when I travel by car, I don't take that big, huge basket with me. You know, no. What I do is, like, I save, let me see if I can find one. Is I have like a little, I save these little bottles. And what I will do is when I'm traveling by car, like if I'm just traveling up to like 2 hours away to Tulsa to see my best friend, like I'm not going and checking into a hotel, nothing like that. You know, I'm just traveling by car, couple hours away to my best friend's house, you know, staying a couple of days with her, whatever. Then that I have for I'll have those empty bottles and I will put the medications with the empty bottles and I will literally take a Sharpie and do the same thing of do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, however many, whatever days of the week that I'm going to be there. Or I'll just label them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever. And I will dole out all of the medications and I will put them in the bottles for each day. And I usually carry 1 or 2 days extra just to be on the safe side. That's another tip that I have for you is if you are traveling, if possible, take a couple extra days of medication with you. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if flights are going to get delayed, if you're going to miss flights, if you're going to decide to like stay on a couple of more days. Like I know there's been a couple of times where like I've been up at my best friend's house and I've called my other best friend and said, could you take care of the cats like one more day? You know, just, you know, be prepared so that you can actually like have that little bit of extra medication with you. So, I will get more into difference between hospital and home later. But when it comes to going from home to the hospital or going from home to the doctor's office, take the medications with you, or at the very least, have a copy of the prescriptions with you. Like most pharmacies will give you like a printout, you know, as part of your receipt that has like the medication number and dosage and whatnot on there. Keep those. Keep those, put them in an envelope, keep them somewhere where you can grab them so that if you are going up to the hospital, you know, if for some reason, God forbid, something happens, you can go up to when you go up to the hospital, you can hand the prescriptions to The nurse, not the doctor. You hand the prescriptions to the nurse when they come in and start asking you, well, is she on any is the person on any prescription medications? You can say yes. Here's the list. Like, here's all of the prescription information, and here's the thing that I know is going to come up. Don't the hospitals have that information? No. In some cases, yes, they will. Like, if you were with a major medical facility that does everything in-house, then yes, they will. If, for example, like me, I live in a rural area. So we have a hospital that has like basic emergency services, basic hospitalization, things like that. Anything that requires a specialty gets sent to a different hospital. That hospital does not have records from the other hospital. All what they're going to have is like the paperwork that my hospital fills out to send me to the specialist. Like, I'll give you an example is when I had a hysterectomy, I specifically went to the Oklahoma Cancer Institute simply because of past issues with mom with her breast cancer. I went to Oklahoma Cancer Institute. They had a limited amount of records. Fortunately, they asked me ahead of time. They sent me, a packet of materials and said, please fill these out. Please provide this information before you go up. Unless it's a pre-planned appointment where you can get all of that information together, before you leave, most hospitals aren't going to have the time to submit your whole medical record to the other pharmacy, to the other place. So have that list of medications with the dosages and when the last time it was filled. So like I said, easiest way, pharmacy gives you the printout associated with your receipt. Don't throw that away. Take that, put it in an envelope, mark it medications, and either stick it with the medications and then just switch it out each time you get it refilled so that the doctor knows when the last time was it got refilled. Because here's the thing with medications. You ready for this? When you are at home, those are the home medications. If you want the person to have those medications in the hospital, you need to provide them with the list of medications. You need to provide them with the prescription labels so that they know, oh, this person is diabetic. This person is on this number of units of insulin. And then they can go ahead and check with the doctor and say, okay, this is all of that. They can go ahead and put it in the computer, check with the hospitalist, and say, okay, this patient is on these medications. They came, and this is what, they came in for, was this. And the doctor may choose, okay, well, based on the symptoms, let's hold X, Y, and Z medications, but it's okay to give them A, B, and C medications. But the hospital has to have the doctor's order. They cannot do anything without a doctor's order. It helps facilitate the process if you have the medications, either the medication bottles themselves, or like I said, envelope with the most recent prescription sheets that say, these are the medications that they're on. You provide that, it will help facilitate things as you go along in the hospital. Another thing with medications, if you are administering medications, in other words, you are actually giving the patient their medication. You are actually giving your family member the medication. Make sure, number one, that they take pills with plenty of water. You give them to them one at a time. You know, now I have been guilty of this. I have just like taken a handful of like all of my medications. You've seen how many I have. But I have been guilty of putting them all in the palm of my hand and then just going boom, drinking a bunch of water and swallowing them. If you are dealing with an elderly person, like when we were dealing with my 98-year-old grandma, we had to make sure to give her the pills one at a time with a little bit of water. And then we have to have her open her mouth to make sure that she took all of the medications, make sure she wasn't cheeking them. In other words, when we talk about cheeking, we talk about that patients will hide pills in their cheek and make like they swallowed them when they didn't. They will hide them under their tongue and pretend like they swallowed them when they didn't. So that's why we have them open their mouths wide, and then you look, make sure, other thing you can do is kind of smooth it out. The other thing is if the person is having trouble swallowing, like they're having trouble swallowing a pill, encourage them to drink a little more water. What you can do is kind of massage gently just along here. It's like, when doctors do this and they have you swallow, they're actually checking your glands, they're checking your swallowing reflex. But the idea is that if you massage along here, then you get the person to swallow more. So then hopefully that pill stays down. That's the other reason that you give it to them one at a time, is so that they don't choke. Now, like I said, I've been guilty of the whole handful, boom, into the mouth, drink the water. And occasionally, there will be meds that come back up. And inevitably, especially if you're taking, I'll just give you an example of one of the over-the-counter medications that I take. Look at the size of that thing. I mean, that is a big-ass honking pill. So you're taking that along with a bunch. You take that on its own, it's a big honking pill. Yes, you're going to need more water to get that down than something that's a little bit tinier. But more often than not, when I take like the whole handful of pills, that's the pill I'm going to choke on. And even though I know that it's a big honking pill and I've choked on it before, like I said, I'll still take the handful of pills. I'll still take the handful of medications, the vitamins and everything, and my prescription medications, and I'll just take the handful and go boom, water, bye. Because I get impatient. But what I really should be doing is taking them, one at a time, drinking water. Yes, it's more time consuming, but it's safer for the patient. So, those were my tips and tricks for medications. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. And comment down below, and please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.